All right, I've got to be honest. This is one of those updates that might seem pretty small at first, but the more you look into it, the more interesting it gets. There's been a roster move that could end up meaning a lot more than people realize. And at the same time, there's another storyline coming out of training camp that's getting harder and harder to ignore. If what's been happening over the last few practices keeps trending in this direction, we might be looking at something that could have a real impact sooner than expected. So let's jump right into everything that's going on. But first, click the like button and leave your shout-out in the comments. Go Hawks! The Seattle Seahawks have officially made a roster move that immediately caught the attention of everyone following training camp. And while it may not have been the headline many fans were expecting, it could end up having a much bigger impact than it first appeared. The team has decided to waive Kenny McIntosh, a player who had become a favorite among many Seahawks fans because of his explosive playmaking ability whenever he had opportunities. Unfortunately, his journey was heavily affected by the torn ACL he suffered last year, and despite already being on the PUP list while trying to work his way back onto the field, he never fully returned to the point where Seattle could continue moving forward with him. The decision officially leaves him off the roster. And while it is disappointing from a personal standpoint because of everything he had to overcome, it also creates an intriguing situation for the Seahawks moving forward. What makes this move especially interesting is not simply that Kenny McIntosh is no longer on the roster. The bigger story is what Seattle did not do afterward. Normally, when a roster spot opens, another player is immediately signed to fill that vacancy. That did not happen here. Instead, the Seahawks are currently sitting with an open roster spot, and that naturally creates speculation about what the organization could be planning next. Is another signing coming soon, or is the front office leaving flexibility because they are preparing for something bigger? At this point, nothing has been announced, but the open roster position immediately becomes something worth monitoring as training camp continues. While that storyline develops, another name is rapidly becoming one of the most fascinating stories inside Seahawks camp, and that is rookie running back Jadarian Price. The timing of McIntosh's departure naturally brings more attention toward Price because he has been receiving an incredible amount of work throughout camp. Rather than easing him into the system, Seattle has taken the opposite approach. The coaching staff appears determined to put him in as many different situations as possible, giving him opportunities with multiple offensive units, while asking him to perform a wide variety of responsibilities. Coming into the draft process, there were legitimate questions surrounding Price's overall workload and whether he could eventually develop into a featured running back at the professional level. His college production was impressive whenever he touched the football, but the total number of carries throughout his career remained relatively low. He never surpassed 120 carries in a single season, finished with fewer than 300 rushing attempts during his college career, and also wasn't heavily utilized as a receiver. Despite that lighter workload, however, he still managed to produce 24 touchdowns, showing remarkable efficiency whenever he received opportunities. Add in his success as both a kickoff and punt returner, and it becomes much easier to understand why Seattle believes there is significant upside waiting to be unlocked. What is standing out even more during training camp is the coaching staff's determination to answer every question that existed before Price entered the NFL. Rather than protecting him from situations where he previously lacked experience, they are placing him directly into those situations over and over again. Every indication coming out of camp suggests that the Seahawks want him learning through repetition instead of simply observing from the sidelines. Running backs, Coach Kennedy Polamalu-Hammock, and the offensive staff have made it clear that the best way for Price to improve is by consistently putting him on the field. One of the biggest concerns surrounding Price entering the league involved his ability to contribute consistently as a pass catcher. Instead of limiting those opportunities, Seattle has essentially embraced that weakness and turned it into a daily priority. Throughout camp, Price has been catching passes from every quarterback on the roster. Whether working with Sam Darnold, Drew Lock, or Jalen Milroe, he has been rotating through multiple units and receiving more repetitions than almost anyone else at his position. Of course, the learning process has not been perfect. There have been moments where he ran the wrong route or made mistakes that naturally occur during a rookie's first training camp. But those errors have not changed the coaching staff's confidence. If anything, they have simply continued giving him even more opportunities to improve. That philosophy appears straightforward. If catching the football was viewed as a weakness before arriving in Seattle, then the solution is simple. Keep throwing him the football until it becomes a strength. Every practice offers another opportunity for Price to improve his hands, sharpen his route running, and become more comfortable in the offense. Reports indicate that while there have been occasional drops, the overall trend has been steady improvement every single day. Coaches are not asking him to become perfect immediately. Instead, they want constant growth through repetition, and that development is beginning to show on the practice field. Another encouraging sign is that Price is already beginning to produce noticeable plays during full-team drills. One report from training camp described him turning a swing pass into a solid gain after accelerating past defenders along the sideline. Later in the same practice, he adjusted to a difficult low throw from Jalen Milroe, extending his arms close to the grass before completing a tumbling catch in front of linebacker Jamal West. Those are exactly the kinds of moments coaches hope to see from a rookie who entered camp with questions about his receiving ability. Instead of avoiding difficult catches, he is repeatedly being placed in situations that challenge him. Beyond the receiving game, Price's overall athletic profile continues drawing attention throughout camp. His vision, acceleration, and breakaway speed have all been highlighted as traits that immediately stand out whenever he takes the field. Seattle's offensive system places tremendous value on runners who can identify running lanes quickly, while exploding through them before defenders have time to react. Early practice observations suggest Price possesses exactly those characteristics, giving the coaching staff plenty of reasons for optimism as they continue expanding his responsibilities. Perhaps just as importantly, his workload has not been limited to one specific offensive group. He has worked with the first, second, and third team offenses, giving him valuable experience alongside different quarterbacks, offensive linemen, and skill position players. That broad exposure should only accelerate his development because every unit presents different timing, different blocking combinations, and different game situations. The Seahawks appear determined to prepare him for every possible scenario instead of allowing him to become comfortable in only one role. As training camp continues unfolding, it is becoming increasingly clear that Seattle has a very deliberate development plan for Jadarian Price. Every practice seems designed to challenge him in another area, whether that involves catching passes, carrying heavier workloads, or learning alongside different offensive units. The departure of Kenny McIntosh naturally changes part of the running back room, but it also shines an even brighter spotlight on the rookie who continues receiving opportunity after opportunity to prove himself. If the early reports continue trending in this direction, there will be plenty more to discuss as the competition progresses and the Seahawks move closer to the regular season. With an open roster spot now creating new possibilities and Jadarian Price steadily building momentum through every training camp practice, which of these two developments do you believe will have the bigger impact on the Seahawks moving forward? The encouraging reports surrounding Jadarian Price extend beyond simply catching the football or handling a heavier workload. Another area where he has been generating positive attention is the way his natural speed changes the entire rhythm of the offense whenever he steps onto the field. Several observations from training camp suggest that defenders immediately have to adjust because of how quickly he attacks running lanes. That kind of acceleration doesn't just benefit the running back himself. It forces linebackers to react faster, which also changes the responsibilities of the offensive line in front of him. One of the more interesting comments to emerge from camp came when offensive lineman Gray Zabel discussed the differences between the running backs. When asked whether he could recognize who was carrying the football simply by the way the play developed, he explained that Price's speed immediately stood out. According to Zabel, when Price lines up in the backfield, linebackers are forced to move faster, which means offensive linemen must also react more quickly to stay ahead of the play. He emphasized that he trusts every running back to do the job, but he acknowledged that Price's pace creates a noticeably different environment for everyone involved in the play. That is an important observation because it highlights something that statistics alone cannot fully capture. Speed affects every player on the field, not just the ball carrier. Defensive reactions become quicker, blocking angles change, and offensive timing adjusts. Even before appearing in a regular season game, Price is already influencing the tempo of practices, simply because of the way he runs. Another positive development involves an area that has not received as much public attention as his receiving ability. While many conversations focused on whether Price could consistently catch passes out of the backfield, reports from camp indicate he has also been performing well in pass protection. That aspect of a running back's responsibilities often determines how quickly a rookie earns meaningful playing time, and positive feedback in that department carries significant value during training camp. Head coach Mike Macdonald has also offered encouraging remarks regarding Price's progress. Although he is not known for constantly praising individual players in front of the media, comments surrounding the rookie have reflected genuine satisfaction with what he has seen. Reports discussing Macdonald's evaluation highlighted Price's quickness, lateral movement, willingness to compete, and commitment to doing everything asked of him. Just as importantly, his effort in pass protection has been mentioned alongside his athletic traits, suggesting that the coaching staff appreciates his complete approach rather than focusing on only one aspect of his game. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from everything happening in camp is that Price appears willing to embrace every challenge placed in front of him. Instead of avoiding areas where improvement is needed, he continues working before and after practice on the same skills that scouts questioned before the draft. Every extra repetition catching the football, every opportunity with different quarterbacks, and every assignment alongside different offensive units reflects a player attempting to accelerate his own development through hard work. From Seattle's perspective, that mindset fits perfectly with the strategy the coaching staff appears to have adopted. Rather than limiting his responsibilities, they continue expanding them. They want him carrying the football, catching passes, learning protections, and experiencing as many game-like situations as possible throughout training camp. The objective seems clear: prepare him for every possible opportunity that could arise during the season. Looking back at the roster move involving Kenny McIntosh, it becomes easier to understand why so much attention has shifted toward Price. McIntosh's departure creates another opportunity within the running back room, while Price continues taking advantage of nearly every chance he receives on the practice field. At the same time, Seattle still has an open roster spot, leaving another storyline worth monitoring as camp progresses. Whether that flexibility eventually leads to another signing or a different personnel move remains unknown. But for now, the spotlight remains firmly on the rookie, making the most of his opportunities. Every new practice seems to reinforce the same message. Price is being challenged constantly, and instead of shrinking from those expectations, he continues showing incremental improvement. His workload, his versatility, his willingness to learn, and the confidence the coaching staff is demonstrating through repeated opportunities all point toward a player the Seahawks clearly want to develop as quickly as possible. Of course, training camp success must eventually translate onto the field when the games begin. Practice performances create excitement, But regular season football ultimately determines whether early promise becomes lasting production. Even so, based strictly on everything that has emerged from camp so far, there are plenty of encouraging signs surrounding Jadarian Price's progress, and the role Seattle appears to envision for him. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the latest Seahawks news. Leave a like if you enjoyed this update, and be sure to click the video on your screen next for even more Seattle Seahawks coverage. The fastest updates and the biggest stories are waiting for you right here. Go Hawks!